Welcome to Speak the Truth on Zoom Sunday. My name's Gary Johnson. I'm the publisher and founder of BlackMenInAmerica.com. And I'd like to introduce our host, always every Sunday. He's the 2020 National Association Black Journalist Pioneer Award winner. He's a walking Black history fact, a native Washingtonian, 24/7, 365, DC's radio sports talk show icon, Mr. Harold Bell.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. I'm Harold Bell. I'd like to welcome my team as usual. I see that Jackie Jones is with us, a longtime friend and former producer of my radio sports talk show, Inside Sports. Jackie has written for the Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, the New York Post. She's now the Assistant Communications Dean at Morgan State University. And I see we have with us Ms. Juanita Bright, our community specialist, who joined us and answered to the show. And I see my longtime friend down there, the one and only Maggie Linton. She has joined us with her busy schedule. Jackie, of course, is a pioneer when it comes to sportscasting, female Blacks. She started in Kansas City, where she started out in radio as a sports talk show host. Then she came to Washington, D.C. with WTTG Channel 5 and became the first Black female sportscaster. She went on to have her own show on Sirius XM Radio, and she is a legend. She's an actress. You name it, she has done it. My friend, Miss Maggie Linton. How you doing, Maggie?
I'm super, Harold. How are you?
Okay. And I see we've been joined by our young man who, of course, is everything sports and everything politic. And I'm talking about Mr. Christopher Johnson. And I see we've been joined by our new friend, Mr. Sidney Davis. So I would like to welcome everybody to Inside Sports. And I'd like for my dear friend, John Hollins, to introduce our special guest. John Hollins is a friend. We've been friends for about, I guess, five or 6 years now. I met him here in D.C. when he was bringing a group of kids from Atlanta, Georgia, to Washington, D.C. to take them on a tour of the Smithsonian Museum. At the time, I was a historian for Ben's Chili Bowl, and he brought the kids through there and introduced himself to me and told me he was with the 100 Black men of Georgia. I said, well, that crew here in D.C. ain't doing nothing, John. And John and I became good friends. He's had my back on several occasions. And I would like John to introduce our special guest because John was once his mentor. John Hollins, introduce our special guest.
It brings me pleasure to introduce him. First of all, I wasn't his mentor. He and I were childhood friends. Yeah. And believe it or not, he connected with me based on, I think it was a Facebook post. But whatever the case is, Michael Jackson and I have known each other for over 40 years. I graduated from Central College in Danville, Kentucky, and has a dual Bachelor's of Science degree in Economics and Management and in Government. He later received his Juris Doctor's degree from Florida State University Law School. And I'm not going to read his entire bio, but just to kind of touch on, in June 2004, Michael made local and national news when he was elected district attorney, becoming the first African-American elected to the position in the 4th Judicial District Circuit. Michael was featured in Jet, Ebony, Time Magazine, and the New York Times. While in office, D.A. Jackson has prosecuted several national profile cases, including Alabama church arson case in Bibb County, the Alabama artifacts case, the ex-state trooper Bernard Fowler charged with the infamous murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, the homicide which led to the 1965 Selma and Montgomery voting rights, the march in the 1965 Voting Rights Act on Edmund Pettus Bridge. Michael Jackson, my longtime friend.
All right. Welcome, Michael. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule And John, that bio needed to be read because that is fantastic history that Michael has accomplished. And on the last day of this short month, Black History Month in Washington, D.C., it's great to have Michael on here. Michael, I'm going to put you on the hot seat right away. Michael, you know, I'm just thinking, where were you when that protest took place at the Capitol and those marchers invaded Capitol Hill and just invaded the Capitol period and people died? You know, what were you thinking as an attorney when you saw that happening, Mike?
Well, let me just say first, I want to thank John Hollins and you for inviting me. I've known John forever. Like he said, went to high school for a number of years together. We used to play baseball at Gresham Park, and on and on. But as far as your question, I was at work down here when all this stuff was going on that whole day. I saw some of it. Then obviously later I saw. I went back and saw a whole bunch more, but it's just kind of sad that people they criticize other protests, peaceful protests, but then they turn around and try to tear up the Capitol, try to hang the vice president, the Speaker of the House. It could have been a whole lot worse. They were very fortunate that it wasn't a lot worse as far as people getting killed and that type of thing. It could have been a whole lot worse.
Well, Michael, do you think that President Trump encouraged those protesters from what you were able to see?
No question. He didn't even ask what happened to the vice president when our Alabama senator down here told him that they were escorting Pence out. He didn't even care. He could care. You know, he didn't ask later, well, is Pence safe? Is Vice President Pence, is he safe? Anything? He didn't care. So we've been in some unusual times here the last few years. A lot of what we have here is a lot of people thought that this kind of thing couldn't happen in the United States. We always brag that we the country that people need to model after other countries. But we saw how close that our democracy and republic almost fell apart. And from what they're saying now, it still ain't over because they're still talking about possibly blowing up the Capitol when Biden makes his speech coming up, his big speech coming up. So it's not over. And sadly now, I'm not up in DC, but I understand they got barricades all up, walls, barbed wire, everything. I can remember when I got in office, when I first got in office, I was invited to lay the wreath to the unknown soldier, and we could walk all around the Capitol. When you got inside there, you could walk anywhere. You could go visit anybody's office. I had to go up there too when I was doing the Jimmy Lee Jackson case. I had to go up there to get the pictures of the marchers that got beat. I was able to get pictures up in DC from that 1965 march that right before Jimmy Lee Jackson got killed. So I was able to just go everywhere in DC, go all on the state capitol grounds. I remember I got an award up there one time when our congressman gave me an award, and I'm on the steps of the Capitol. We taking pictures, all that with the group, and it's just totally different now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Jackie, would you like to pick up from there?
Sure, thank you. I was just thinking as you were speaking, Mr. Jackson, about because it does look like martial law up here, you know, with all the barricades and the fencing and all of that. Do you think that's where we're headed? Do you have any sense of what's going on? A lot of challenges still in different states that are more supportive of the insurrection than not. What do you see happening?
Well, we got a lot of folks in Alabama that support that insurrection. And that's in our state government, unfortunately. But I think in the long run, we're going to be fine, because I do think the New York District Attorney is going to end up prosecuting Trump. I just think that's going to happen. There's no way that's not going to happen. And I know it met this New York District Attorney, so I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. And he might get prosecuted in Atlanta, in Fulton County, and other places like the Attorney General in DC might do so. But I know the New York District Attorney is going to prosecute him. Now, whether he gets convicted or not, that's another story, because he might have somebody on the jury that goes along with him. I don't know, but he's going to be prosecuted. So by the time he's dealing with all that, I don't think we have to worry about him in 2024. What we got to worry about right now is the immediate problem that these folks are still angry. They think Trump's going to come back on March 4th to be the president. So, and then they worshiping the golden Trump, like that Moses story when they were worshiping the calf. These folks are supposed to be conservative Christians, but they pretty much worshiping the ex-president, which is a scary thought.
Maggie?
First of all, it's great meeting you. I have friends that live in Selma, Linda Blackman Lowry, and also.
Yeah, I know very well.
Yeah, she's one of my dear friends. Her book is fabulous, Turning 15 on the Road to Freedom. In case you all don't know, Linda Blackman Lowry was the youngest person to walk from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, and she's got a great award-winning book out about it. And I'm also friends with Fred Gray's niece, and Karen Gray Houston.
But
Yeah.
you from Selma. You sure you ain't from Selma?
No, I'm not from Selma. No. My mom was actually born in Hollywood, Mississippi, but raised in Tennessee. And my dad's from Dublin, Georgia. But neither here nor there. The encampment started after 9/11 of Washington, D.C., a lot of places being shut down. That's when it really started. The craziness now is I always say you can't fix stupid. And that's what the Trump supporters are. They are stupid. Because if they think that this federal government is going to stand still and let these few stupid people, and it may be hundreds of thousands, even millions, they're not going to be shutting down this government. But what I see now is the move to try and suppress voting once again. And because Georgia has been swept blue, I wouldn't be surprised if Mississippi wasn't swept blue. My sister's working hard to get South Carolina swept blue. And I feel that Texas is going to be swept blue with all this mess that they have going on. And I just wanted to know your opinion of what you feel, because I'm still the firm believer that it starts on the local, state, and then national level. So tell me what you think.
Well, the Voting Rights Act has been gutted a lot with that Shelby County case out of Alabama. As a matter of fact, one of my counties is right near Shelby County that I'm the district attorney in. And depending on who the attorney general is, you still can do a lot of enforcement with the Voting Rights Act, but by them gutting it though, what it has allowed is states to pass these laws that they would have had to get a pre-clearance. So they able to pass these laws to suppress the votes. And that's gonna go, they done already started it in Georgia. Because now I'm from Georgia, like that's where I met John. I'm from Georgia, so I keep up with what's going on in Georgia. And I know Latasha Brown very well down there in Georgia, and Cliff Albright, Latasha Brown, all that group. Cause they from Selma, and they went down to Georgia to help Stacey Abrams. And Stacey Abrams' sister has a big position at my college, Center College that I went to. And she was on at our college the other night. So I'm familiar with all these folks. And the lady that lost the U.S. Senate position, she done formed her own group to try to counter Stacey Abrams. And they're gonna try to pass all kind of voter suppression laws in Georgia, because they don't want that to happen 2 years from now, because you know Warmack, the Reverend is up for re-election in 2 years. And so they don't want that seat to stay Democratic and other things with the seat. They don't want that to stay that way. So they're gonna pass all kinds. Now, I do agree with you that Texas is gonna end up being blue at some point, but I'm just sorry, I don't see Mississippi going blue. Alabama ain't going blue. The only two possibilities I see is Texas and possibly Tennessee. Tennessee appears to be a little more progressive too. So Tennessee and Texas, possibly in the future, especially Texas. But Alabama and Mississippi is going to be like Alabama and Mississippi for the next 30 years. I'm just sorry that we deeply red, super red. As I was the only African-American district attorney for 12 years. I was the second one that ever got in. I'm the vice president of our district attorney group right now, but I'm the first Black vice president, the first Black secretary of treasury, and I'm gonna be the president next year. But we in 2021, and it's still a lot of firsts going on. And so Mississippi and Alabama, I'm just sorry, they're not turning blue for another 30 years.
John Hollins, come on in.
Well, I'm listening. I hear what Mike is saying about Georgia, and he's right. Many of the Democratic state representatives sat out on the steps this week in protest of the bill that they're trying to push through. So it is a fight, but as Mike talked about, a lot of it has to do with the progressiveness of the people. And, you know, I can't speak to Mississippi. I've spent some time in Alabama, and, you know, as Black folks, you know, how do I better explain this? I don't want to talk about Mississippi, Alabama. I'll tell you actual specific thing that happened to me. I was vacationing in Charleston, and I was in a nice hotel, and all the help were African American, and they were still performing like we did in slave days to a certain extent. And I was trying to figure out what's going on down here, like what's happening when you talk about progression in terms of mentality of people. And sometimes people just decide that if I do this, this, and this, I get this money, I don't care, you know, and so they continue behavior. So when you talk about being progressive, a lot of that has to do with defying what everybody says that you have to do and doing what you think you need to do and what is right. And I don't think the people in Alabama nor in Mississippi are progressive enough, like Mike said, to make those moves yet. But you never know, because just as Georgia did it, sometimes it takes one to see someone that looks like them do it for them to say, you know what, we're gonna do it too. So Mississippi could turn around faster than you think, just because they saw it happen. Because a lot of times people don't do things, you only know what you know. You only do things because you think that that's all you can do. So, you know, it could be either way.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask Sidney Davis, why do you think we as a people are so divided? Why do you think that we're so divided?
Harold.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I mean, the question has a universal impact in terms of our thinking. Those who've been sort of moved to various positions left how we should be accountable to one another to keep a solid foundation and a solid position for moving beyond the currents or maintaining the currents of racism by not having conversation with one another. This man here, Jackson, is in Alabama, right? And so when I look at Alabama and its history, and I look at how the criminal justice process is operating across the spectrum, your question is meaningful and most healthy, and it demonstrates why we have not been in conversation with one another. When he is elected, he takes a position against the system, or he in fact allows himself to be metastasized into the growing of racism, those currents. So he's one individual, and whatever position he has not taken is not going to be voluntarily given to him. So we can't think that because we are elected into position that the currents of racism are just going to go away. They are present, and we have not had conversation enough for changing the consciousness for how we think when we find ourselves at difference and at odds all the time because the money is slipped in, and so people got to survive. And so you don't want to address the critical issue of family reunification across the board. Everybody is looking out for their families, but there's a critical procedure, regulations that keeps us from understanding one another, loving one another, watching how the drugs is put in environments and various communities, how the prison industrial complex increases, how there's no skills or no training in those areas. So there's a clear difference in terms of how we've been programmed not to have a conversation once we're in position. So we begin to metastasize the problem that much greater. It's like cancer metastasizing in a woman, in her breast, in her body, or anyone that has contracted it. Now we have this COVID thing. And how's it being addressed? The distribution of the vaccines in various communities. So yes, the question that you asked is nutrition. It's a nutritional question that has not been addressed because people don't want to talk about it once they get in position. Whatever law there is, they subscribe to that law that desecrates Black families and Black communities. So I'm saying you're not going to be able to change it if we don't have conversation.
Okay. Juanita.
Hi.
Yes.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You have a question for Michael or anybody else?
Yeah, I actually, just to switch gears for a second. Hi, Mr. Jackson.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. So, my question is about COVID vaccinations and the dissemination of those vaccinations in the lower income, specifically in the Black community.
Right.
I'm in Prince George's County, and we've had a lot of issues, even to the point where the computer system has crashed recently, at least my understanding. So the lower income, the Black community is not, in my opinion, on the top of the list to be able to have vaccinations afforded to them. In addition to that, we've also had an issue with the white community, the more affluent community neighboring us, Montgomery County, actually coming into Prince George's County and getting some of those vaccinations that should be coming to the residents. So I'm just curious as to what the climate is like where you are, and how the vaccinations are being distributed, and if the Black community is having full access to what you have available.
Very good.
There's a lot of different issues with this vaccine because you have a lot of blacks who don't want to take the vaccine. That's the first thing. I was in Subway arguing with some young person about taking the vaccine. They didn't want to take it. I've been in Walmart. When I get in lines, I start talking to folks about the vaccine, whether they'll take it or not. And you'd be surprised at how many blacks say they don't want to take it. They don't trust it. They're not going to take it. They think it's going to make them sick, it's going to get in the virus. On and on and on. Now, I'll say, when I first went and got my first shot, thankfully I got both my shots now, but when I first went to get my first shot, it wasn't nothing but me and one other black that went and got the shot. All the other folk were white. They were lined up all the way down the hallway. Whites might not want to wear a mask, but they want to take the vaccine. I'm just telling you, everywhere you go, they lined up to take this vaccine, and blacks, I finally decided to make it mandatory in my office that you take the vaccine, unless you have some kind of health issue or you got some religious reason why you can't take this vaccine. But so I got most of my folks vaccinated, but I have a young black female who's an attorney who, when I first brought up taking the vaccine, I saw the look of horror in her face. And so I knew it was going to be a problem. And of course, she done brought me a letter from a doctor saying she can't take the vaccine. I told her, I know this big, but I'm going to let you get away with it. Because your mom and nurse, I know you get to grab some doctor to do this. But legally, I don't think I can get rid of you. So, but I know it's BS. But I'm going to let you get away with it. And so, but now the problem has been around here. They started to turn folks away. And they done ran out or something. So you don't know whether that's true or not. What I have told my family, you know, everybody got this group testing thing going with the virus now. So you got group tech with 100 family members keeping in touch with each other. And I'll say this now, what you need to do is tell people to go get the vaccine, and then if they ask, are you in one of these groups that's supposed to get it, you say, I'm here for cancellation. Every time they get this vaccine shot out, a lot of people cancel their appointment. And then these folks get on the phone and start calling their friends and family, telling them to come up there to get the vaccine. So all you gotta do is when you go, you just say, here, I'm here for a cancellation.
Let me ask you something, Michael.
Yeah.
When this bacteria hit these shores, there was no plan to defend the communities, African American community. There was no plan. There hasn't been a plan. Now the distribution plan is being appearing to have transparency, but these individuals who are impacted by the COVID research and all the things that makes for a better community, should it be, do you think it should have automatically rolled out an emergency plan for all communities, as opposed to trying to say, well, the essential ones, or the ones that are most vulnerable according to preconditions, should have opportunity to get it? Should there have been a divide so that one could get it over the other? The virus itself is impacting all communities, so therefore we should have an effective plan to roll out for everybody to get testing, to get the vaccination, to get whatever would improve the health of every community and every family. So do you see means why that was done that way, so this one would be chosen over the other?
Well, I think it's insane that teachers weren't included with law enforcement. You know, the first responders and law enforcement, how can the teachers not have been included? I just think it's crazy that the teacher would put on a third or fourth list of people that could get the stuff when you're trying to open up schools for these kids and that type of thing, because folks can debate me all day, but I truly believe kids, especially when they're young, they're an adult or in college, that's one thing, but when they're little kids, they need to be in school around other kids and around their teacher, not at home on a computer, trying to do this virtual learning. Quite frank, most of the time the virtual learning is only for a couple of hours a day. And so the way they divided this up though, it to me was crazy about, you know, and don't get me wrong, I understand the doctors, the nurses and the nursing home being first, but after that, the whole process didn't make any sense on who was next. The teachers should have been in that second group, and that has really hurt the public school system, because the private school system, they had their kids going to school, and those private school teachers are taking the vaccine, and so it's really hurt our public schools. So they're gonna set us back for years with the fact that the kids ain't going to play.
My point is, why haven't
Hold on, Sidney. Let me get Chris in here. We got some other people I want to get in here. Yeah.
Right.
Chris, go ahead, Chris. Chris, can you hear?
I missed a lot of it because I was having some technical difficulties. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I was having some technical difficulties over here, so I missed the first part of the conversation, but I heard various points about the insurrection and about Trump to come back for a second term. I don't think, maybe it might not be Trump per se, because I also think he might, because of his age and his other legal issues, he might be tied up, but they shouldn't discount whoever the Republican is having a very good chance in the midterms, the way things are going right now. They unfortunately. So I think people need to take that threat seriously. You know, the incumbent party always has issues in the midterms anyway. So I think it's imperative on Biden to actually deliver on some of his promises to, you know, get that goodwill. This is his honeymoon period. He's not going to be any more popular than he is now after just switching out from Trump. And he needs to use that political capital to fight for people. One of the issues I was curious about in Alabama and in the South is the wages. The Democrats have folded on, you know, not increasing the minimum wage. What would you consider a living wage where you're at? And what is your opinion on the fight for $15 minimum wage?
On the minimum wage, I believe the minimum wage is gonna be it's gonna be hard for them to pass that, because you got some Democrats that not gonna vote for it. And you know the whole group of Republicans are not gonna vote for it, but you got that guy in West Virginia and a couple other Democrats that point blank say they not voting on the $15 minimum wage. I don't know if it had been, you know, they tried to do like $2 more extra from the minimum wage now, it might have passed, I don't know. But I don't see, the Republicans are starting to get together starting to try to block everything. And so they were, after the Trump time, they was kind of thrown off balance for a minute, but now they pretty much done gotten together and about to start fighting all kinds of stuff. And so I just think it's gonna be hard to pass a $15 minimum wage. I just do. Whether it's Biden in office or the next president, or if it's Harris in office in 4 years, it's just gonna be hard to pass a minimum wage where you basically doubling the minimum wage from what it is now, almost. And I'm not saying people don't need that. I'm just telling you, realistically, politically, I just don't see that pass, doubling the minimum wage. If it's a smaller amount, then I think it can pass. You can put it in another bill like they did before. Last time they put it in a defense bill and got it passed. You put it in something the Republicans like, and you might be able to pass it. 2 more extra dollars or something, but that $15.
Gary Johnson.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my comments brief. I'm going to kind of piggyback on Juanita's topic back to COVID and the vaccine and share something that was shared with me by a Black physician. I'm fortunate and blessed that I've been fully vaccinated, got the 2 shots, minimum reaction, didn't miss any time. And but I've been talking to a lot of Black physicians, and one physician said something that really stuck with me. He said, look, I know what the virus can do. He said 4,000 plus deaths a day because of the virus. He said 0 or minimal deaths because of the vaccine. He said it's a no-brainer, do the math. He said, I think everybody should be vaccinated unless there's some medical reason. And, you know, so my mother, she's 88. She's had her first one.
Gary, let me help you on a fact you just shared.
Go ahead.
When it comes to deaths, you know, I serve on the board for Grady Memorial Hospital. And so our chief surgeon shared with us that something they have not shared with the public. There have been over 1,100 deaths from the vaccine. Now,
okay,
when you think of over 20 million vaccinated people, they have deaths when you take the flu shot as well. So it's still, even when he shared that with us, he said everybody's died except for one person, to their knowledge, that wasn't 65 or older, didn't have pre-existing conditions. So he said there was been a doctor that had internal bleeding at 42 years old that they couldn't stop it. Most people who have died from it have a bad reaction right off. It's not like they take the second shot and they walk down the street for a couple of weeks and drop dead. They immediately start having a bad side effect. But that being said, back to you, I agree. I still think you're better off taking it than not. But I just want to make sure that you know that people have died after taking the shot.
Good. That's a good point. And even with those numbers, I still play the odds.
I agree.
All right, Gloria Gaddy. Gloria, are you there?
She's not. I don't see her.
Okay. Jacques. Hey, Jacques, come on in, Jacques.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, Sidney, don't laugh too loud. And good to see everyone here. I just want to say that I think a lot of this is a politicized, not just in America, but especially here in Prince George's County. It's a doggone shame that we are spending millions on police brutality cases. We got Black leaderships. We got and I'm gonna say this, and I don't care what voter get mad at me. We got a bunch of stupid, ignorant Black voters in PG County who allowed 2 extra at-large members to be added to the county council in PG that's costing us millions. One of the guys has had lawsuits against him, Calvin Hawkins, who Sidney worked for. So I ain't gonna be
wait. Let
me finish.
Let him talk, Sidney. Let him talk.
Let me finish. And what I'm going to say is that we have to wake up and quit subsidizing and trying to appease people just because they're Black in power out here. They are taking advantage of us wholesale. You never hear them get in office and lower your taxes. Angela also Brooks has raised millions, Calvin Hawkins and others on it, not just him, but all of them have raised all kind of money. And yet we still have, less than stellar services. And we're supposed to be the richest county, Black county. And I'm a light-skinned Black. And I'm just as mad as dark-skinned Sidney or dark-skinned Fullwood when he was in Ike Fullwood over in DC, So don't get it twisted. I'm a DC general baby born, but I just feel that this is something that we don't talk about enough, that Angela also Brooke ought to be embarrassed when she walk out into the store and you're giving away millions and then we can't to lawsuits for these racist white cops. You got a couple Black ones, ain't no good neither, and just costing the county. And yet we can't get online to get the vaccinations. And one of the, I think Mr. Johnson was, or someone was just saying how they went in and they seen all these Black folks in line. I mean, white folks in line, and just a handful of Black people. I want the shot. I'm 65. I can't get it just yet. But so those are some of the things that we have to quit ignoring, that these big Black churches that's taking in millions, they ought to be pressing these council members and our leadership. Lower the taxes on these black folks out here. Come on, ask my taxes on a house that I live in is $6,600, and I got an apartment building that's twice this size over in DC, and I'm paying $4,600 a year in taxes. And I'm making money off the apartment building in DC, and here, of course, this is where I live, but you know, it's just inequity. And again, I'm blaming black folks. I ain't blaming Donald Trump for everything. So black people need to quit going around trying to blame the white man for everything. Sometimes it's its own Negroes, and I'm saying Negroes. That's what's on my birth certificate. With that said, Harold, excuse me, I don't mean to be so loud and boisterous, but I have to be.
All right, thank you. Hey, Charles, let's see Charles up there. Charles, come on in. What you got to say, Charles?
Yes, I like your point, Jackie. And I'm thinking about when the question was asked about why we don't come together, and the wretched of the earth, Francis Fanon made the observation about own internal violence, and he was talking about how in the colonial period, how colonialism had created such a mentality amongst the people, that's the only thing they saw. So they had like the contradiction was so serious that they was at each other's throat. But however, at some point in time, their consciousness was raised. And when their consciousness was raised, they in turn started organizing around doing things to change the social conditions they was under. That being said, I agree. PG County is the outpost of the goddamn Washington, D.C. Everybody should know PG County, after Glenn Denning, the last white person to become county exec, they threw it up. They said, well, we don't have no more need for this. Only thing we're going to do with this outpost is we're going to exploit the wealthy class, the gated community, and ignore and suppress the black community. So in that regard, I agree, we need to organize. We need to really sit back and organize around holding them people accountable in PG County, the Hawkins, anybody that sit on the council, and claim to be representative of a district. If you represent any district where it's a depressed area, and money's not going in there, and then you make the connection between a more affluent gated community, and then we got issues. Because you can't come back and say like, oh yeah, our children shooting and killing each other, but yet you ain't doing nothing to change that narrative in terms of their thinking. So right. I agree, and I'm a member of the National Action Network, John R. Lewis, National Action Network. We're up, we're running, and we're getting ready to hold everybody in PG County that claim to be anybody. We get ready to hold their feet to the fire. We get ready to get real aggressive with a lot of the issues, because a lot of civil rights issues going on in PG County, such as what the sister was talking about, the vaccine. You know, how do you have you don't have no equity in terms of who get it and who don't get it. With the gated community, or the more affluent community, they got it. And they got it because of also Brooks, what the brother was just saying about raising money. So thank you for this opportunity. Okay. And just stay posted. Y'all will be seeing us. Y'all will be seeing our information throughout PG County.
Okay. Let me say we're running out of time. I want to switch gears here, and I want to switch gears for something that was mentioned. You know, we're talking about qualified immunity. We're talking about how our county spent $20 million for a cop that went into the police car with a guy handcuffed and shot him dead. They had to pay $20 million out. Now, what just came out in the media, Michael, just came out in the media the other day, that our Prince George's County executive, which if you just do your homework, PG County is one of the most brutal, racist police departments in the country, one in the top 10, and have been there forever. Now, a group of Hispanic filed suit against a PG County Police Department. A group of Black brothers on the police department filed suit, and it just came out the other day that our county executive spent $13 million trying to hide that account. Trying to hide that they didn't want the people to know. So we gotta stop. I agree. We can't keep blaming Donald Trump for all of this. It's us, and we got to hold each other accountable. Michael, what are you doing, Michael? As far as it's a big issue all over the country, and that's qualified immunity for cops. Tell us what you're doing down that area and what's going on.
Well, I can't get into too many details, but right now I have a case, well, actually 2 cases, because we're prosecuting a couple cops right now for police brutality. A couple white police officers that I'm gonna say allegedly brutalized this black when they pulled them over. That case is scheduled for the fall. We just had a hearing on it, as a matter of fact, but obviously it's a pending case. I can't go into too many details, but if somebody wants to Google it and look it up, you can see it was a brutal, very, very brutal situation. But I will say this happened prosecuted that state trooper that killed Jimmy Lee Jackson. If y'all watch the Selma movie, y'all can see how that affected everything back in '65. And that state trooper killed Jimmy Lee Jackson. These kind of cases where you prosecute police officers, law enforcement, as you've seen across the country, most of these folks have gotten off, or they weren't prosecuted, or nothing happened to them. And so I think that feeds in with the fact that nothing really happens to most of these officers. I think that causes a belief from some of these officers that they can get away with anything. And that's why we're going forward too again. I've done it before. Like I said, the 1965 case, 40-some years later, I prosecuted that state trooper. But I also have some pending cases right now on police brutality, where these two in the Selma area are dealing with white officers, but I have one with a black officer that did some to somebody that was handcuffed. So where it comes to, it's not necessarily the white officers doing this to folks going outside the law, but some of these black officers do it too, so they gotta face the consequences too. But I think the problem is in our country is most of the time they're not facing consequences. And so that causes a false sense of security for them to just go, and not all officers, because there's a very few, but when they go outside the law, they go outside the law. You know, once they do that process of going outside the law, when they pull somebody over, it's a bad situation.
Now, Gary, will you play that video so everybody can see that video? This video was at a police forum that I did about 5 years ago, and I just want you to listen to some of these cops. Go ahead, Gary.
But I am not here based on my association with the FBI. I am here based on my association with the national organization of Black law enforcement executives, where I serve as the president of the Washington, D.C. chapter. We promote community policing, 21st century community policing. It is all about giving back, getting in the community, knowing the folks within the community. You cannot police people you do not know. Amen. You have to be a part of the community in order to make things work. So I am here representing those, and I will let this young man that's sitting in front of me tell you a little bit more about our partnerships and what we do as an organization. It's wonderful being with you. This is our Noble's first involvement with Mr. Bell, and I look forward to a long-lasting association. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tony Dixon. I'm the Community Outreach Chairperson for Noble, the Washington, D.C. Metro chapter, which we just referenced. For those of you who are not familiar with Noble is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Its mantra is justice through action, and what it intends to do is to have a better relationship, not only with the community, but also it advances the interests of the law enforcement community as it relates to the promotion and the advancement of opportunities for law enforcement, both at the local, state, we realized that in those particular positions, we can have an impact in the community, as we said, since we know the community, and if we're active in the community. In order to be active in the community, we are a force multiplier, and we believe that we do that through interaction with partners and with partnerships. Because we don't know these communities, all aspects of it, as well as you all might. So we reach out to the different partners that we can develop in the community to establish a better relationship so we can be more effective in that community. So again, I'm community outreach chairperson. I have 35 years of experience in law enforcement, recently retired from the Department of Labor, also Inspector General, where I was the first director of investigation. But I'm now here as a part of the Washington DC Metro Capital Local. Anything I can do for you, please give me a call. Stop by and talk to me. I am the community outreach chairperson.
Is that it, Mr. Bell?
No, hold on.
Here today was supporting VI and all the people going on in NABJ on the community. Thank you for the invite.
Okay, that's it, Gary.
All right.
Let me say why I showed that piece. Now, if you had a chance to see that whole room, there are no white cops in the room. And this has been I've been doing police forums and these things for years. And the reason that I stopped, that was my last one in 2016, because we could never get any white cops to show up, and they are the ones that really needed to be there. Now, the first two guys you heard, they're from Noble, you know, the police organization that got cops from all over the country that's a part of this thing. And they're supposed to be, well, you know, they remind me of the Congressional Black Caucus. You know how you go to the caucus every year, and the first thing the people want to find out, where's the party? A party over here and a party over there. Well, that's what Noble has been all about. And each time I've had one of these forums, I've invited Tony and them to come and be a part of this thing. As many of you know, we had, of course, AJ, who has a campaign that love is the answer when it comes to community policing. And then we had our man, Dwayne Bryant, who has a book out called The Stop, how he goes into schools in Chicago and try to teach our young people how to survive or stop by the cops, because it is very important that our young people know that. You understand? Now, I invited AJ, I invited Dwayne, I invited Nat Alston, because you know what? We need to be transparent. We don't need to be talking behind each other's back. We need to find out what kind of progress are you making in your campaign? Because as we all know, the thin blue line is still there, the code of silence is still there, and the FOP is the Ku Klux Klan. And we don't have anyone that will stand up. I've been saying this for years. Those of you know me, I've been calling that here. My brothers, Earl and Bobby, were, of course, police officers. And I watched my brothers fight the thin blue line and the code of silence trying to be good cops. You understand? And we still got this stuff going on years later that we're still trying to figure out what are we going to do about community policing. I walked during the riots, I had nothing but a badge. And I walked the streets for 3 days with nothing but a badge. Because I trusted Tillman O'Brien that he needed me out here. And this is the book that Gary's mother was a police officer. This is Tillman O'Brien, the late Tillman O'Brien. He knew about policing, community policing. He came out in the neighborhoods and walked by himself. We got to make sure the people that we've been without a police chief in PG County for 9 months. 9 months we've been without a police chief. What is happening? Tell me, somebody take over. Anybody come in? Because
I'd like to jump in. I think this is why there's a mass movement to defund the police, and why people think policing needs to be reformed from the ground up, torn down and rebuilt from the ground up, like rethink how we police and how we budget the police, because this change from the inside obviously is not working. It's not all the bad apples seem to be outnumbering the good apples. And the people do. I have a friend who's a black cop, and he makes the same argument. Well, it's not me. I'm not the one, abusing people. But what are you going to do about the ones that do? Is there any progress? Are you going to hold your fellow officers accountable as well? Like, I'm glad that it's not you doing the abuse, but like, you acknowledge and admit that it happens regularly. and that you still work for the department in light of that. So like, if you're going to do change from the inside, we need to actually get some change from the inside. If the system is designed to run the way it is, you're not going to be able to change the system. You're going to end up becoming a part of it. So I think that's why people intensely want the police to be defunded, not as to rip away salaries, but to, because we're paying the price, as you stated before, like in PG County, the taxpayers are paying the settlements for these police, aggressions and this police violence. So like the money is coming out anyway. So it could be better used, instead of paying off lawsuits for killing unarmed people, to maybe go to our schools, go to our roads, go to our education, go to many other issues that we need. So we need to defund the police. And we also, it sounds like we need to defund the politicians as well, because their median income is pretty ridiculous as soon as you get into politics, and they rake in huge amount of monies every campaign cycle, every time around. But then again, when the people need help, this is on a local and national level, all of a sudden the pockets are short, as you said, with PG County and things like that. There are all this money to do cover-ups, all this money that is unaccounted for. There needs to be accountability. Again, we can't just accept that the system is broken and try to make these incremental changes. It needs to be some sweeping criminal justice reform and campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
Michael, let's let Michael.
Hey, Mr. Bell, can I say something?
Okay, yeah, I want to bring Michael in on this. Go ahead, Juanita, real quick.
I just wanted to respond, the question of what are we gonna do about, my belief is that information is power. We can't just say, oh, the blacks are ignorant, but those whites that was down on the Capitol were ignorant too. But the difference is that they have information. So I think that information is power, and I think also that old thinking of follow the money. If you want to know what organizations are doing and what they're not doing, look where their money come from. See, if you find out where their money come from, then you know what their agenda is, and you can't, So there's some basic things that in my opinion, that we can go back to while we all get together and have other ideas of how we're going to get things done. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, Michael, pick it up from there, Michael. As we were talking about community policing and what's going on and how these cops are getting away with murder. They really look like these cops are paid assassins. Look like they are paid assassins because they're not even thinking about what's going on. That young brother that was jaywalking in California just last week, just jaywalking. And they assassinated him right in front of the cameras and everything. So that means really they don't care.
Well, that's why part of this ain't just the police department, it's the prosecutors too, because these bad officers are gonna have to be held accountable, because what some of these officers don't realize is that they destroy the whole department when you got some bad apples running around. But I think the key is, one of the keys is training. You got to get better training with these officers. I had an incident where I got stopped right outside of the house. I was about to put my little boy in the car. I thought they were coming up to me to talk to me about a case when somebody had reported a black man in a t-shirt that was acting crazy, and the officer didn't recognize me, even though I had a district attorney t-shirt on. And the guy was a new officer, but man, the way he was talking to me, and I called the chief later and said, look, I'm not trying to get this guy fired, but y'all need to get better training with these officers, because if he's talking to me like this, I can imagine what he's just saying to the regular citizen out here. And so, but I'm not in no agreement with defunding the police, because the problem is with that thing about defunding the police in these poor neighborhoods and other places like that, where crime is bad, where people are shooting people and that kind of thing. Those citizens, they want more of a police presence. They don't want a bad officer, but they want more of a police presence in their community, because oftentimes people in those communities can't even call the police because they'll take an hour, 2 hours to get out there. And by the time they get out there, whoever shot up somebody is long gone. And so what most citizens, black citizens, just like white, they want to feel secure. They want to be able to walk around in their neighborhood without worrying about getting shot or robbed or raped. And so what you got to do is, people talk about their community policing, but it had to be real community policing where they actually in the neighborhood a lot, where they know the citizens, talk to people, find out what they doing. We had a program here, and I thought that was a real good program, but they stopped it, where the officer and a code enforcement officer would go knocking on everybody's door and ask them, you know, what kind of problem they had. They would tell them about services. But if you talk to that citizen at his front door, he liable to tell you what's going on in the neighborhood, as opposed to telling them they gotta come to the police department and tell what's going on. But most folks, a lot of people don't trust the police, so they're not going to the police department. But if you go knocking on their doors, they know you, and you done been there a lot in the community, in the neighborhood, and they more likely to tell you what's going on in their neighborhood. But you can't eliminate this. I mean, you can't defund the police where these citizens don't have anybody to protect them. So the money needs to be spent on training and real community police, not just saying, hey, I'm for community policing with somebody on a bike or something, that kind of thing. In the neighborhood, it had to be real. People talk, it's just a lot of rhetoric on stuff. You gotta do real things. And then when an officer does something crazy with a gun or taser or anything like that, they're gonna have to be prosecuted. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, can I respond to that real quick?
Look at, hold on, we got to get ready to get out here. I want to give everybody at least a minute. Jackie, let's start up at the top with you, Jackie. Come on in, Jackie.
Okay. I had one last question, but we've kind of run out of time.
Yeah.
But my thought is, if we're looking at prosecutors, what's the advice for, or what's the outlook for prosecutors? The DAs are the ones who are bringing the cases. They're the ones who are determining whether they're going to ask for, say, diversion in a drug case, or you know, some sort of counseling or whatever. How much latitude do they have, and what do they need to be able to do their job better?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm dropping I got my little boy with me.
Okay.
The same for prosecutor, it has to be training going on. But you also gotta, as a prosecutor, you gotta believe in programs. When I became district attorney, we started a pre-trial diversion program for nonviolent offenders. If they complete the program, the charges get dismissed. We also started drug court. These folks are getting hooked on drugs. Now, I'm not talking about selling drugs. I'm talking about people that get hooked on drugs, burglarizing places, stealing. We help start that to a drug court program. So if they complete that and get treatment, that charge gets dismissed. And then we can pass and I was a big advocate of this, passing an expungement statute. You know, if your charge gets dismissed, then that arrest shouldn't follow you the rest of your life. So now we have an expungement statute in Alabama. And so before I became district attorney, we didn't have any of this stuff. So the district attorney had to believe in certain programs to help people. You can't put everybody in jail and expect to get yourself out of the crime problem that you have in a community. In Selma, see, I have 5 counties. I have the largest circuit in Alabama. But in Selma, we have every type of crime you can think of: murder, rape, robbery, all of that. And you can't lock everybody up and get out of that problem. You have to come up with some ideas on how to deal with crime. You know, you get tough on murderers and rapists, but these nonviolent offenders that's smoking a little marijuana or something, there's no point in clouding up the jail with these folks. So.
Okay, Maggie, this is real quick, y'all. Maggie, go ahead.
an interesting discussion. I have a lot of opinions about many of the things, but one of the things that Mr. Jackson just said was so true of rethinking how the crimes are punished, and the importance of, and we've talked about this many times, the importance of networking and trying to prevent the amount of crime among our own people. 3/4, I'd say probably even more, 3/4 of the people Black people that get shot are shot by other Black people. And it's over stupid stuff. And a lot of times the stupid stuff is because somebody's got a jacket that you want. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that goes on. We got to raise our whole demeanor and way of thinking in order to move forward. We can't just still be stuck in the same old ways. My parents were very progressive. My sister and I are progressive. And I just think that there are other ways that we have to look at in solving these crimes. And one of the things is electing the right people to the office, which obviously is not happening in Prince George's County.
And no doubt about it. Chris, real quick, Chris.
Yeah, my last thought is just, I don't think there would be a mass movement to defund the police if these underfunded communities felt protected by the police. If they trusted the police that they were protecting and serving the community, I think they would not want the police to be defunded if they didn't feel like the police were, as we spoke about before, are able to get away with sometimes killing people in the community with impunity and not getting any consequences for it and things like that. And the racism and the fact that we have a cash bail system that is disproportionately racist, and as was just mentioned, marijuana laws that are disproportionately racist. So until those things change and the community trusts the police, that's going to be the issue of, if people see the police as a terrorist force that is abusing their community, that's like saying, let's give Al-Qaeda some more money to give them better training. The community is not going to want that if the community does not trust the police.
Okay, Jacques, go ahead, Jacques, close it out quick.
I just want to say thank you all. Everybody put in some very articulate points. My point being the best. I'm teasing y'all. That's a joke. But we all have something that we need to think about, and we do need to try to be a better force for our community.
Okay, Sidney, real quick, Sidney. Gotta tell you real quick. Next week.
So the ultimate solution from the conversation is we know that we have to do something different in terms of how we vote and how these tax dollars are being used to the detriment, because you got people that are misrepresenting those that should be protected in families and in communities. For example, the politician, Jacques mentioned Calvin Hawkins. I once was employed in that office as a constituent service specialist, where I drilled down on how to resolve matters that became too inflamed. I was removed from that office without knowing that I was removed, and that you can't put that on COVID. That's just the way people do things and the way they treat one another. How we treat each other is what we see as the results of us not coming closer together in community, particularly politicians who throw a rock and hide their hand. You don't know what the hell they're doing until it happens. They're not transparent. It is not the operative thing to do to be transparent. It removes people from a consciousness that allows for them to be more healthier and supportive of one another in the midst of all of the danger that we face. Police brutality, all kinds of inequities, injustices, economic inequalities. We're not having these conversations to the richness of improvement, and the position is not being taken to bring about a greater health in how we think about a system that just matriculates in taking the advantage of kids, of families, in communities. And we are the host of it because we don't flush it off. We don't address it.
Okay, Sidney. All right. This young lady down here, I hate to go out of here without giving you at least a word right down here in the left corner. What's your name? Unmute yourself. Have you unmuted yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have a last word. Sorry, you got hit.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Sidney was saying about us as a community. We need to stick together when it comes to providing unity for our youth. They're watching us as a whole. And if they feel like they cannot come to us or look to us for answers, the future will be just lost.
That's right. You're right. Thank you, darling. John Hollins. John.
Yes, sir. No, Harold, it's always a pleasure to be here with you. Always to hear dialogue on issues and concerns of the community. Glad that Mike was able to join us. Thank you, Michael Jackson, for coming on. But, you have quite a few distinguished guests. So as Sidney said, the dialogue has to have some form of a positive change. And we might have to start here and put action to words, because if there's no change, then it's just a conversation.
That's right. All right, Michael, what did you have the last word? Thanks so much, Michael, for taking time out of your busy schedule, man, to be with us on this Sunday. And thank you for the great dialogue. Go ahead, Michael, you take it out.
Gotta unmute.
Unmute yourself, Michael. Michael, unmute. Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm sorry, I had blanked out for a second, but I'm back, and I was glad to be invited. Thank you, John, again, and Harold, and all the others. I enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Again, we got to emphasize training for the officers and also training for the prosecutors, because it's a combination with this police brutality. It's the lack of prosecutions on these cases, and it's a lack of training and understanding of these officers about their impact on their community. So again, thank you for inviting me. Good to see everybody. Y'all keep up the good work.
Okay. Thanks, gang. Thanks, team. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back here next Sunday, and we're going to continue this conversation. Gary Johnson, can you take us out of here? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Don't get mad. Get strategic. Everybody stay safe. Wear that mask.
And remember this, gang, as you go out of here, remember that you cannot soar with eagles if you're hanging out with chickens. Bye.
That's prosecutorial misconduct, Harold.
Hi, I'm Harold Bell. My wife Hattie and I founded a nonprofit organization in 1968, shortly after the riots that almost destroyed my hometown, Washington, D.C. The program caters to the needs of at-risk children as it relates to social services such as education, law enforcement, drug abuse, gang-related violence, and other antisocial behaviors.